Welcome to B2Education Unpacked, the podcast where we get under the skin of the business of education. I'm your host, Stella James, and in each episode, I'll sit down with inspiring guests from across the education sector, innovators, leaders, and change makers, to explore the trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the future. Whether you're working in education, building solutions, or just passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. Let's unpack the big ideas and real stories driving education technology forward.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think my intro is, with this conversation especially, is AI is shaping everything that we do. All right. And I think you, by the way, this is Dr. Neelam Parmar, but you've been thinking about AI for a long time when some of us didn't even really know about it. So it's a real pleasure to have you on board today and talking about AI and education. We already just started, didn't we? Just chatting about it. And I was like, oh, we're going to stop. So thank you so much for joining us. And that's all right. And we're going to fire straight in with the questions because you're against the clock as well. So obviously, I've talked to Atif from Duke's Education, and we were talking about he's building platforms that's worth millions. But obviously, you're a different side of that. You're on the implementation side of EdTech. So how do you think about the relationship between scale and genuine educational impact? And what's the distinction that matters the most to you?
So, firstly, thank you for having me here. That's all right. You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. In terms of your first question, building platforms and solutions to work with your schools, the global schools, everything I tend to look at now is at scale, particularly because I'm working across groups that have numerous number of schools. So when I look at a platform that either building or implementing or even thinking in the wider scope initially, it's more about what problem is this going to solve. And I think that's kind of where we need to start all the time. Lovely to have nice to haves, and they come after the problem gets solved because then we can start making it more efficient. What's my bigger problem here? And great, we want to adopt it at scale as well, but that's really not what we should be looking at. I think we need to be thinking at what learning are we trying to attract at scale? And how can we get there? So for instance, if you're building learning online teacher academies, professional development platforms, where are the issues that are emerging constantly year after year within a group, within a multi-academy trust? And then what can I do with a multi-million-dollar learning platform that I could meet the impact to see on the ground as well as at top level from a bird's eye point of view? Like what sort of data can I get at group level or at a more strategic level where I could get it, make informed insights and decisions? But then at the same time, it's feeding where we need to change or where we need to see impact or where we need to see difference in behavior. And that, I think, is the grounding of any sort of platform or any solution we want to look at moving forward.
So we all know from a solution point of view, the hardest thing is implementation, isn't it? EdTech is the hardest thing to implement into a school, but it's just beyond that scale. Yeah, no, I think maybe it's an interesting, tell what do you think? Because even if you're doing it on scale, and I've experienced this with products that I've sold and put out there, the hardest thing is at scale is implementing it. What stages do we need the teachers ready first before we even think about them? What's your thoughts on that?
So I don't think it's difficult to implement at scale. Again, I think you need to know what's the bigger picture, what's the plan, what's the agenda, what are we trying to do? The problem could be there's just too much on the platform. There's too much within the organization. So it might be that you have to go through an audit. You might have to clean up what's there first, make some really strong decisions about what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of, and then start the scale-up process. And that's not to say you don't introduce other technologies throughout your strategic process or, a few years down the line. What it means is, let's start with what's non-negotiable, what's a priority, that's what's going to make a change we need, and then run with it. Most important, though, is a plan. And no, there are many organizations that don't have plans. And then that makes it difficult to become accountable for it. And that makes it difficult to see the change when you have that 3-year progression, 2-year progression, you can get there. And in fact, you can get the sooner amount. So who's accountable then? Is it the school? Is it the platform? Which bit? It's not never the platform. Usually the user behind the platform, user as in user would pick, personally check. I don't even want to say teachers because they're really there to teach. Okay, so somebody who's dealing with digital across the group. You need to think of somebody who's going to be accountable for this and then hold them accountable for it. That I don't see very often.
I suppose the quick bigger question is, how do you measure accountability as well, isn't it, within implementation of a platform? Like I said, it could be a director of education or it could be an IT lead implementing a new MMIS system. But how do you put those measures in?
Really from start to finish. Okay, so if I haven't engaged over 60%, let's say 50, 60% of my users, teachers on that platform, I haven't passed. At least 60%. 50% is good. 60% is better. Anything above that, I've done really well.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe just set your agenda. Let's say that was my objectives. And then each to their own. So that one really blatantly obvious objective right there and there. I need to make sure I can engage at least 60% of our teachers onto this platform so that they're using this content, they're engaging with professional development, they're improving the practice, and we're seeing it roll across to schools. One little objective there. Another one could be through this platform. So let's look at it from a tech point of view. I need to be able to create learning pathways for them that are relevant to their career progression so that they can move along in their appraisal, their performance levels. So from a system perspective, what can I do there? How do I tag my content? How do I use AI to create the personalized value part that will cater and customize to their preferences? From a senior leadership point of view, where can I get that data for them? Where can they see what their teachers have done? For instance, how do you put together learning transcripts? What are their qualifications they got? What are the certifications they've achieved? So that they can then see this person's ready for their next move. So it's a bigger picture here. It's not just about a system, because the system's a tool. It's not about the user, because the user's doing it about themselves. It's not about senior leadership either. It is to some extent, but it's that bigger picture that we needed to have out.
It's interesting as well, because if we look at that from a completely 60%, I thought it would need to be higher actually. But if you think from a platform perspective as well, if you've got a platform and your engagement with one particular trust or one particular school is over 60%, they're doing a good job, a very good job.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got 30 plus schools and you've got 60% of your teachers actively engaged in looking at applications, EdTech tools, and then offering their insights in forms of bite-sized learning. It's very good. You've got 60% of your schools using a particular application or tool, let's Kahoot on your bottle, whatever application you have. And you know that it's being rolled across in a very cost-efficient way, streamlined, it's effective, you've got economies of scale. It's very good. Instead of different individual schools working with account holders in different pockets. Yeah. So, I mean, you can choose. Do you want 50%, 60%? And every year, just improve it.
Okay.
So then that's how you get your success.
From a school perspective and from an EdTech perspective. Okay. So you did a PhD using technology with young children at a time when an iPad, I suppose, was in classrooms, and I think we saw it as a bit of a gimmick. Or it was like, it's a bit bonus sort of thing. Was there ever a moment where you went, I am wasting my time here, as if nobody is listening?
So for starters, it's really interesting to hear you say, I think it's a bit of a gimmick. Because I started my PhD in 2009. Okay. And I had a different topic completely, but I went on maternity leave. So when I came back, my topic was exhausted, but the iPad came. And so when I saw it, I never thought, is this a waste of time? Is this a fad or a gimmick? In fact, I probably didn't even have the back end of an educational system to tell me that. I just knew that we needed to look into it. And I was doing a PhD. Most PhDs, or those who do them, don't necessarily follow in that path. They'll just do it and move into something slightly different. I did. And even then, when I went into my first role with my PhD, I still didn't look at it as a gimmick. It came at a time when my third child was born, and so he'd gone into nursery, and I saw the practitioners giving young children iPads as babysitters, okay, as a babysitting device. And I thought, there's something there that we've lost out on. It could be fun. Okay, they're playing with electronics and they're learning about these applications, connect the dots, color the pictures. But there's something bigger here that we hadn't seen. And so I went into, I don't know if you heard of Alpha Blocks. It was a cartoon that was on EGC. And so I worked with them very closely in delivering their solution on the iPad for young children. And it was learning the alphabets, phonological awareness and phonetic awareness and putting characters together. But came out of it is that using iPads was a great visual device, visual competency for those who struggle. So children with perhaps ADHD or children who are dyslexic, seeing an image and a sound and connecting it together was very powerful. So although my PhD came out with digital pedagogy at its heart, one of the recommendations was actually this is a great way to deliver teaching to young children who might be struggling with phonetic disabilities or phonetic awareness and anyone else who struggles initially.
I think it's an interesting area though, isn't it? Because I think, gosh, I know over the last 10 years, technology has evolved massively. I still think there is still a little bit of skepticism around having iPads and using iPads. Look, there's a lot of research coming out at the moment from that perspective. But I suppose in the last 10 years, has there ever been a point where you have just gone, look, this is a bigger picture and it's going to evolve even more and people haven't listened?
They have. We're here 10 years later. And we have iPads and glass.
Do you feel spoke, Chris?
I never even thought about that. They have. I mean, look at the amount of schools that have devices in the classroom. iPads are all over now.
Yeah.
You know, when we first started, there's like 5 or 6 of us who did this. And people just say, wait, what do? You work in school? Never heard of that.
Yeah,
you know, so I had to always say, no, I work with IT. And they used to think I work with technicians or I used to teach the curriculum. It was very hard to explain something what I did. Now I really just saying it. Yes, but then if you said it, yes, it's there. And you know, it's similar sort of conversation again back to AI. What's going to happen with this? I think it will come.
Yeah, as well. So go back to so you wrote the book Digital Parenting. Why'd you put a face like that? Was it truth height? So your children are roughly about the same age as my children. So we were in the midst of it, I think, weren't we? When technology was sort of, you know, at home. Did you, when you were talking to people about iPads, and you say back then, actually we need to limit them, or did you at home limit it? Did you practice what you preach? Or you did, very. Even if you got the screaming,
oh boy, do that. Very much so. In fact, I think when it came out, because I'm in this environment. Yeah, I think let's use it as much as we can. And you know, I should be really proactive. But I saw what was happening with my young children. I've got through that. So I think I want to say it was 9, 6, and 3. Very young. Actually, that done. So we drew up a contract. Came to the point when I said, we're going to draw up a contract, young children.
3-year-old. Just go like that.
So we drew up a contract and I said, let's negotiate the terms because I'm not happy to see you on the device or gaming all the time. At the same time, you want to be able to use this. Yeah. You like playing, you like coding, and I get that. So what can we do to make this a happy place for both you and me? And so we came up with a few contractual arrangements. I will use the device on X amount of time in a day. We look at these websites. On Friday and Saturday, I get to play with my friends and do a bit of Minecraft, etc., etc. Yeah. But there were times when, you know, either I would break the contract because I had enough, or they would fall short, and we just had to be accountable. My young ones learned very quickly if there were consequences for your actions. No, that would talk, right?
Yeah, I'm impressed. Although I would not believe the arguments I had in my house.
It's hard. It's hard. But no, there's nothing to say about parenting. It's so hard itself nowadays. It's a learning curve each develop. So when I wrote that book, I was very conscious that I didn't want to dictate or tell anybody how to do things. What I wanted to say is just keep up with the conversation, talk to them. What's most important is identify with what they're doing online. You don't need to be there and understand the terminology. Why are they using those emojis, for instance? What is that conversation mean? Keep the door open. Even to their and I still tell my 16-year-old, like, if your door's shut all the time, I'm conscious. I'm unaware of it. So, keep it open a little bit. Let me just hear what's going on a little bit. I don't need to know much. And I'm certainly not eavesdropping. I really don't want to know, actually.
Oh, no, I think some bot done that bit. It's funny, is that so my 19-year-old was very much engaged and still gates, he is, but he's learned to measure it. But I do, I think we all use it sometimes to our advantage. If you needed to work, I'm sure you've used it sometimes to go, right, okay, it's, I've got to do this, that is the iPad, fill your boots, yes, sort of things. Then I'm sure you've used that,
That's when I broke the contract. That was my accountability. Many times you would squeeze in, throw it, and rewrite the contract. But that was after a period of time. So you have to grow with your children, and then I have to rewrite the rules. And the rules at 9 are not the same as the rules at 16. And that's something to be aware of as well. I mean, to be fair, my digital parenting book is slightly outdated now, although I think the philosophy stays the same. Have the conversations, be close to each other, be there the whole time, be it customized, climatize yourselves with it. Don't take hands on because there's a lot happening.
Oh, it is. And I think with AI, yes, we get that. It's a whole new conversation. I'm really going to park back on just there when next. But, I think you're absolutely right. I had a business that was teaching online safety. God, that's just 10 years ago. And I always said the narrative has to be open. You have to talk openly. You have to have a conversation. But it has changed massively. And I think, and I think there are more controls. When our kids were younger, we had to trust them. We had no controls whatsoever. All of the controls from Sky and all of those sort of places, they weren't there, like they are now. So it was a whole new conversation in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Selling into schools isn't like any other business-to-business sale. Budget cycles, safeguarding, multi-stakeholder decisions, it's a different game entirely. B2 Education Mastery is the complete business development guide specifically for EdTech. Positioning, pipeline, stakeholder navigation, all of it, on demand for you and your team. Find it at seventhsibling.co.uk.
So this moves in really nicely to your LinkedIn post. Oh, this. So you posted and you were talking about digital pedagogy to digital capabilities. For people outside the EdTech bubble, what that actually means is, why should head teachers care?
So, yeah. Interestingly, I had few head teachers comment on that post. And what they said was, one, interesting piece, but two, more importantly, what does that mean for our current structures, our conditions, and our systems at present? So I've been studying this a little bit more recently because I had to go and do some work with a particular school. And what I found was there's this model called TPACK model. It's one of my favorite models by Rubin and Mishra, I want to say. And when we were doing digital pedagogy, and again, this is something that I've been doing for years now, how to integrate it in our teaching strategies so that we can deliver it with our students. We worked around this TPACK model where you looked at technology, pedagogy, and content. The teacher's always been the guru of the content subject, content specialist, an English teacher, a maths teacher. It was a technology bit where we had to understand how to use the technology, what its capabilities were, what its limitations were, and how we use that tool, so to speak. And then there was the pedagogy. Okay, so we've got our current pedagogical practices, but integrating it with the tool, what could that look like in perhaps providing real-time information or adapting it to our processes or getting data? But it was that sweet spot in the middle where we needed to get to the technology, pedagogy, content. Okay, so it was a little bit there. Now with AI, there is a slightly different version called the TPACK ADR model. There's several others, but I like this one best. And then, interestingly, you don't need to know as much about content because guess what? Content is there. Your biology, chemistry, physics, it's there. You got it, right? Yeah. The pedagogy you could know, sure, as a teacher, you'll know what works in the classroom, what are some of the things you need to think about, your strategies, but it doesn't apply in AI. It's a very different way of looking at it. So I'll come to that in a second. So actually what's happened is everything, our technology, the pedagogy and content, the TPACK model is sitting in technology, is sitting in AI, that AI space. So the implications of that is teachers need to become very artificial intelligence literate very quickly. But two, if the pedagogy has shifted within AI as well, and the content's already there, what is this AI pedagogy? And that's what I was trying to get into that article of mine, that we don't need to think about the content, which it's always good to know about the content, but that's placed in there. The pedagogy is no longer, let's take that technology and use it in a way that would be really fitting for the classroom or provide the outcomes we want or streamline our processes or give them the future-ready skills. But rather, that pedagogy is now going to be inserted in this AI. And how do I, as a teacher, need to create a learning design where the students still learn it and not dependent on the AI because the AI is taking that bit off there? And so that's the big question mark here, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's stopping adults as well.
Yeah.
Us thinking. It is, isn't it? Because you only have to go with Claude, or you go into Gemini, or you go into the Copilot. And I think we're at a point where children can go in, young adults can go into AI and get those answers straight away. So the content's there straight away. So how do we stop that? How do we make sure our children are still thinkers, and sort of just going and asking a question? They're better at it than we are, but where's that going to go?
So I don't think AI is going anywhere.
No, it's not.
Thanks, Dave. Because it's already now in, for instance, in our systems, 30 plus children have access to AI. Yeah, whether your school encourages it or not, it's happening. It's in all the systems. Okay, so if you work in the assumption that that's where we are, then what can we do to create a learning experience? I don't even want to use the word new, because today new will be old, tomorrow high. So a learning experience that's going to be adaptable to the student at their learning experience. So if you work with this idea of multimodality, there's lots of debates. There's multimodality, there's language, there's AI tutoring, there's revision, there's a whole bunch of different things. Well, let's work with multimodality, because I've seen this in action. Students who work visually will have that capability with AI on one-to-one. You may not have that in a classroom at 30, but you'll have that in a one-to-one with an AI. Or if you work better with listening and speaking, that interaction can happen too. Or if you work much better with all three and you're really good with texting, or not texting, but typing away and then having a little bit of an image, but then back into sexting, you'll get that as well. So you can see that in a book LM. You can see that in any AI tutoring sort of assistance. So I think that's the learning experience we need to start creating. And if a child is not necessarily understanding the DNA biology through English medium, they have the option to work with AI to get it in a different language. And they'll do that anyway, even if you do it in a classroom or not. But then make that sort of swap into the English medium when they need to. So I think there's a lot of different, I don't know if I'm say this properly or not, because there's so much in the mind at the moment, but multimodality will help learning as well.
Because I think as well, if I don't understand something, and I think children should be allowed to do this. You might shut me down here, because I think, but say, for example, a teacher said something, or you say something to me, and I think I'm not quite sure what that means. So, for example, you were looking at digital capabilities. So I went, okay, explain to me in English what digital capabilities means, right? Just to make sure that I knew. But then it put it straight away in plain English what that meant. Should we be teaching children to question a phrase and go, what does that actually mean in my world, sort of thing? Because I think then there's still learning, aren't they? But they're just asking a different question in a different way. So it's creating that curiosity.
I don't think children naturally ask that many questions unless you ask them to ask questions. So I think the most important thing is we tell them, that everything you get is not 100% true. So even if you get AI, question it. Okay, so again, I think this will help because one of the things we need to think about, the bigger picture here is, what is it that we as teachers should and must continue doing? Yeah, right? We are not handing over that power. What is it that we are very happy to hand over because actually it's not going to weaken the learning for the student? And then what is it that we can do to strengthen that question, that curiosity, that deepening of information? So those are the three big questions they ask. When I run PD sessions, I will actually have a whole list of teaching strategies on a piece of paper. And I'll get two to teachers to come up and I'll say, you're going to answer these questions for us. Modeling, is that something that you as a teacher must keep within your local context and your environment? Because again, it changes. Versus handing it over to AI because you think AI can do a better, quote unquote job. Okay. So what tends to come out is that peer-to-peer discussions, reflection thinking, modeling is something that we will keep as teachers generically. On-the-fly activities based on the student's competencies. So they'll answer the questions and they'll get the next set of questions. Yeah, that's okay. Are we okay to hand that over to the AI? Yeah, as long as you've got that data, we can read the narrative in the end and we can see insights of where we need to place them next. So there are some things we're going to be very possessive about, the human agency. And so we have to think about where is AI strengthening human agency rather than the other way around.
And at the end of the day, it's not a Google, but it's just it's instructional. You know, AI is instructional. Yes, you can get it to create things, but from an everyday purpose, you're instructing it to do something. So that's where the questioning comes in great, because you just ask her a question and then never come through. Yeah. So it's quite it is there now, all of this. Yeah, I know. So, I listen to a Sing podcast where AI, I'm not even going down there, but oh wow, it's incredible.
Would you ever say, Stella, that's the same thing happened in the digital? Like we were there and then it got better and it got refined and it got to get more mature. And then you find yourself at this stage where you've got the tools, you've got these systems, they sort of brought together and it works and it's under control of environments. So let's give it some time to mature. Yeah. It's not as ugly as it looks, but it is in its state of being felt as it was with iPads and applications. And at one point, you had like 500,000 applications of the app as well, right? So it's going through that phase. It is more powerful. It is more powerful than a digital tool or a digital application. And that's what we need to be very acute of.
Yeah. And I think the word AI it's been thrown around everywhere, isn't it? You know, it is literally, I know I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you only have to go to bed. When we were walking around bed, how many places are throwing the AI? And I'm not saying it's a rule thing, but I'm just saying it's almost such a buzzword, but I think it will be normalized pretty quickly in exactly the same way. Do you not remember EdTech 10 years ago, 12 years ago? It was a deep breath and, does it solve that problem? And, all of those type of things came through. And I think AI will go, we call it, not no choice, it's going down that way anyway. But I think we also have to be careful with the AI world, in EdTech especially, with how that's been used from our perspective.
Yes. And I think the dialogue needs to change towards becoming human-centered. There's nothing wrong with AI. We should keep EdTech, AI, absolutely fine. But it'd be me to fix on the human-centered side of things. But again, I think we need to define that. The idea of being human-centered, the idea of not forgetting the humans in the design, the bigger picture, is, again, very widely used in our networks. What do we mean by Mac? It's, like I was saying to you earlier, I think it's about character development. And it's about grit. It's about resilience. It's not shifting the dialogue away from not having AI teaching and human teachers. That's an important one too. But really, it's about our learners. It's about our next generation that we're developing here.
Because I think they're changing as well, isn't it? And we need to make sure that we do keep teaching them. Like we were talking about characters, and we need to develop that. And the children of this, they don't have as great resilience as us when we were kids. We're not going to show you our way, but it's different, isn't it? It's very different. It's how do we nurture what we had and bring that resilience in today's children. Because I see it with my own children, the resilience and their critical thinking and all of those type of things. And how do we make sure? And that's where we need the human element. That's where we'll always the teachers, because we need to keep that part there. We always need to keep that humanization there to build those characters.
I'm not sure if yes, we need our teachers. I think we need our teachers who understand this.
Yeah.
Not the teachers who are there to just deliver. I know this is slightly controversial.
Yeah.
But we have teachers who are just delivering, and we have teachers who really love the students and care for the students and want to see them grow and develop. And I think that bit is going to be absolutely critical moving forward. How do we build these trusted relationships with our students, because they're going to rely heavily on AI? And it's not to say that we're not the gurus or the teachers at the stage. We will be there, but we will have a different shape to us, and we'll have a different influence on our students. And it's that influence that's going to be very important at this moment.
Yeah, and I think as well, be controversial, but I think teaching will evolve on those really good teachers that adapt to the time instead of just delivery are the ones that are going to shine in the future.
Yeah, they need to know how to use AI.
Yeah. So, look, you've sat on the Department of Education EdTech leadership group. Well, give us the version. Have there been conversations that you have had that haven't been put out there, that maybe have been within closed doors? And
I wish I could give you some exciting news, but I don't have anything. I really thought that. And I was like, could I speak it about on the file? And then I'll tell you why, because it happened during COVID.
oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of it was, how do we get our schools online? I think at that point, I do remember feeling so disappointed, not my word, or upset. It just really, what's the right word for this? So many very dependent schools had gone online because we were in a better position to do so, because we were watching what was happening around the world and our systems were in place. And then there was the other state-run schools who didn't have the capabilities. They did have the infrastructure. They didn't have the pedagogy. They didn't have the tools.
No.
So it was a bit of a scrambling effect, wasn't it? So I thought, it just felt, I really felt for them. It was a difficult time. And, we were all trying to help out. We didn't have as many meetings as we would have liked because it was COVID. And there was just some really important things we had to get to.
Did you get frustrated at any point and want to say, just listen to me? When you were talking to them, we need to do something, especially during COVID, because it really highlighted the fact that, we didn't have the technology there to deliver this.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, come on.
I definitely had a moment when it came to our teachers. Again, I felt for our teachers because those that were teaching in these schools, independent schools, were teaching every day, and sometimes long hours. I didn't even realize I was doing 14 hours a day, for instance. So I felt for the teachers who were delivering versus those that were not. And then when it was time for those that were not to come and teach, and the kickback that went with it, that was upsetting. Particularly more for the other teachers who had already been teaching. So I think if anything, it would have that notion of, come on, we're not here for ourselves. If you're on education, let's serve our purpose. We're here for our students.
And I think that's everything that's behind you as well, though, isn't it? And I think, it's about the student. It's everything should be centered around the children. And I can sense that you must probably got really frustrated because it was like, let's just take the crap away and just, what is the goal here? Let's get back on high.
Yeah, let's teach our students.
Yeah.
That was really what it was, and more than anything else.
Okay, so AI is being sold into schools right now. All right, so AI is like EdTech was 15 years ago, and I know we've talked about it's not going to fix everything, and that part of it. You've watched the hype go around for 10 years on education and EdTech, and now it's AI. What is the one thing schools have got badly wrong with AI and that you can already see that's coming?
I don't know if they've got it badly wrong, but don't think we're paying enough attention to AI curriculum and AI skill set that we need to bring it to our schools. I'm in the process of developing a digital and AI curriculum, a holistic curriculum. So we teach ICT, we teach computing, and we have a curriculum that goes with it, and then we kind of keep it interdisciplinary so that it becomes relevant in everything we do. We had implemented that for AI, and the rest of the world is already doing it. They have brought AI skill set that's required into the curriculum. And again, we're trying to make it interdependent. I haven't seen much of that here. In the UK, yeah. No, there is some, okay? There is some. But if you compare it to what's happening, for instance, China or in the Middle East, we're working with agentic AI. We're building AI bots. We're doing the bigger picture thinking with AI. That's not happening yet. And so that's something I'm very involved in, and I'm working with many organizations and creating this more holistic approach. So here's another problem. Okay, well, we can't add in AI because we already have an overinflated curriculum and we have no time in the timetable. Okay, and let's have a look at what you can get rid of, because it actually it's time to get rid of stuff. It's teaching still the day-to-day things. We don't need to do this anymore. So that's what I do. I work with them. We have a digital AI framework, a very holistic solution, not solution, holistic skill set that we look for students, and based on what is your standards, particular school standards, we blend it together. We create that scheme of work that you need without losing the bits on digital, the bits on AI, and bringing it all together.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we were slow to online safety, building that into the curriculum. That was really slow. So do you think the same thing's happening with AI?
Yeah, we need that primer. You've got that primer. And the fact is that email's coming also, so you can have it. The bit of excited for nice. It's there. Yeah, so I think that's very important. That's probably the one piece of the puzzle that's not been discussed enough. I mentioned this a few years ago, but I think we are at a point where we need to really implement it, yes, as soon as. What can schools do then? What bit of advice would you give to a school
about AI and the implementation of it, or how to teach it? I know it's coming, but what would you say now to teachers out there, or even EdTech companies? What's
so I had seen some of the things that some EdTech companies are giving as well, and it just seems really soft. Very fair. It just feels very soft in comparison to what's happening outside. Our students are really internationally taking AI and doing some very exciting things with it, but they can't do it if they didn't have the knowledge and skills to go with it. Yeah. So those are the bits that we have to really bring back, or at least start teaching. The problem with this again is, are teachers ready for it? And maybe not yet, but we'll get there. Just like we weren't big enough. We weren't sure about computational thinking. We weren't sure about computing and programming, so we got some specialists in, and then we got them trained up. We just got to do the same. We just have to be open to the idea that this is what we have to do.
Yeah, and I think as well, people don't realize the capability. We were talking about children earlier, and my son's building a platform for removals, and he was showing me what he does with Claude. And it's like, wow, because they say there's going to be more millionaire children than which are young adults than there has ever been before, because they understand it. And I think it's going to come from internationally or the independent sector, really, those type of skill sets, because they're that much further apart. As you said, China and the Middle East are moving faster.
So quickly. And I think the other thing here is we tried to mainly, it's just too complicated. It's overcomplicated. The other day I was doing a session, and there was about, I think, 100 teachers in the room, which is really quite big for a PD session. But I was teaching them about data and data science. And in the end, I said, oh, well, you all are data scientists. And they got it. So it's actually understanding, breaking it down into really simple pieces, explaining to them what is it we're trying to do with this data, what they need to teach their students. And once the building blocks are in place, let them get off with it, because they've got the skill set. So they didn't realize actually it wasn't that hard. The word data scientist sounds bigger than it is.
I think it's a fear that is like, it's a bit of, you think, when people's, when you say data science, or you think things about, not out there. But actually, it's quite simplistic data, isn't it? You put it in and it tells you this. And easy, it's
like, how do you train a model? Yeah, not that hard. When you've understood it, then you explain it. You can't, isn't that saying you can't explain it, you don't know it?
Yeah.
Right, so you can't explain it, then you don't want to be talking to those people because they don't know it.
That's interesting. Okay, no, but we're not going to go down that can of worms. So the women EdTech movement matters a lot to you, but had you ever been in a room where you've been more qualified? And I know some of the audience might turn around and go, no, Stella, don't do this. And a man has got the role instead of you. I love the Women in Tech, group and all that, because I think it's something that when you and I started 10 years ago, we were a rare commodity. There were very few of us around in the EdTech sector, and especially in your world. But has there ever been a situation where that's happened with you? You don't have to make your notes.
No. I'm not. I'm very oblivious of this. It's a terrible thing to say, but there are a few things I can say about this. There's a few things. One, I am where I am today because of the men I've worked with. So that's a that's a very interesting place to start.
Yeah.
I've worked with some amazing head teachers in my life and amazing mentors who have given me opportunities to get me here. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. No woman has played a part in this, even though they were petty along the way. If anything, they were the first to shut the door on me. So that's something to say right there.
I actually agree with you, because I look where I am, my toughness, that has come from working, in a male environment. And I think I've been pushed, my boundaries have been pushed more by men. But I know we might be going against the... I'm just saying, let's just put that, we just put that right here. Because
I owe my career, my career today to the men that have backed me up.
I guess
I have been in those situations where perhaps, I felt if I should have received that role or the job spec. Again, I come from a lot of different cultures. And so I always put it down to the cultural difference of myself and the place where I'm being interviewed, where the position's being held, because it's just even not a match. So I've, again, never looked at it as, the better person, the man got the job. I think it's perhaps the way I am, or behavioral differences, cultural differences. Again, that could just be something with me. But I do believe in that the best person should get the role. And if the best person is not getting the role because somebody else was somebody else and happens to be more for a gender thing, then that's not right.
no.
There are situations, I have heard of this. I'm very oblivious to it. But I'm also very hard on myself. So if I don't get something, it's often my fault.
But I think actually it's quite nice to be oblivious, because then you don't allow it to impact you, or have that, and don't tell me you don't already put that little chip on your shoulder from that perspective, because you just move forward and it's like, well, yeah, it is what it is, let's go, sort of thing. So I think that's quite nice, actually.
I do feel bad.
Yeah.
Is when your sales team pitches features to school leaders, you will lose deals you should be winning. Education Sales Mastery teaches concept-led selling, how to align your product to what schools actually care about, run real discovery conversations, and handle objections without dropping your price. Find it at seventhsibling.co.uk.
You've worked with PwC, right? You're in the UAE with Harrow schools and in Southeast Asia, and also working with other institutes in the UK. These are three completely different markets. And we all know the international market is very different to the UK market, because culturally it's very different. Mm-hmm. So what's the one thing that EdTech universally across all of them has worked well? And what's the assumption that makes them completely different from a marketplace?
What's worked really well, or rather what I take across to all three, is you need to trust and you need time. I need time first before trust, actually. These things are not going to happen overnight. Changes are not happening overnight, even though some people think it happened in 3 months. And if they don't see the changes in 3 months, then you're not doing a good enough job. No, EdTech takes time. We've got to shift a lot of things, mindset being the first one. So the one factor that is across, 1 to 2, that goes across all three is you've got to have to give this time, and you've got to develop the trust in things that are working with your teachers and take their word on board. Okay. So in this room, and let's work with the maths. The one thing that often fails is taking an off-the-shelf product from somewhere, because it works so well, in the UAE or the UAE and planting it in your local context, because it doesn't work like that. One, it could be support. Two, it could be the way the workflows are don't work in the environment. That tool just might get too advanced or too basic or too generic for what's required. So working with your local vendors and your local context is absolutely crucial. And if that means making changes to something that's internationally recognized within a local context, and then so be it. We have to do that. So that's probably the two things I would really say stand out. One, you need time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a myth I'll always have to break. It's not going to happen in 3 months. But I can tell you now, it won't take 3 years anymore. You can do it in a year. But
I think it is the average is that anything that I've worked with internationally or in the UK, they all take about 1 year.
Yeah.
And that is from purchase through to implementation.
That's when you start seeing a shift
Mm-hmm.
and the behavioral change.
And if something doesn't work, what do you think it's normally down to?
When you want things to work, you really need leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that's leadership of the person in charge, but also leadership, a strategic priority at the top. Because then it's going to be pushed and move forward. And if it's not a priority, if it's not spoken about enough, if it's not recognized, then that will infiltrate to the rest of the schools that it's not that important. So it's leadership.
I think you have to get the top working it really well and pushing it out, because if you don't have that, you will never implement it. And I also have learned as well that I think there is a shift. Okay, so we've always traditionally had the UK market, all right? And like you said, what has worked in UK sometimes has just been shipped out to the Middle East. And there has been a slight arrogance around UK EdTech. We're British, so therefore it's the best it can be. But I do think there's more coming that are listening better. And it is about listening to what your customers want. I know it's an old cliche, but I think there's a big gap there. But do you think that shift is moving? The UK is starting to realize, actually, we can't just box it up now and ship it out, because that's a nice, shiny, with a lot of money market over there.
I think these other markets have their own entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And they have their own providers now that are doing some amazing work. And I've seen the systems that they have there or the applications. And they have their own sort of restrictions. We need to keep data within sort of countries that's not going anywhere. But you could do that now, we can. And so local product tools it's very good. It's as probably as good as the UK market. And what I'm seeing, or what's really interesting is though, are we becoming too secular? Whereas before we used to maybe cross-pollinate a bit more. Now, are we in a position where we're leaning on our own within our countries?
Yeah. You know what? And obviously we both went to BET. And what I found really interesting was the international, the international spans within BET and how many more products there are, like you said, that are coming from outside the UK with some amazing products. There was some really good products, yeah. And I think you're right. I think, it is becoming a little bit more. Actually, Spain has got some amazing things going on there. And then South Korea, I went to their stand and they've got some amazing stuff going on there. So I mean, the UK has traditionally been the leader in that sense, but I also think it's changing outside that. The more's coming in.
I think it's just as good. Yep, I think it's growing, it's developing. Yeah. They look at things through a different lens. That's something you wouldn't consider at all. So, I think there's going to be quite a big mix. How much we give and take, I don't know yet.
And also as well on the curriculum side of things, isn't it? We're very rigid with our curriculum, but I don't know, I don't know the international curriculum side, but Spain and France, but, are they as strict as the UK? Yes, we're leading as in it's British education. And look, you've got Harrow and you've got all of those schools that are taking that. But it'd be interesting to see what they do in their international, that from a Harrow perspective, what the curriculum is in the UK in comparison to what it is in China. Very different. It's very different, absolutely, yeah. Because there is a British one.
Yeah. If it's a British school in a particular country, then you will obviously carry the British trait. Yeah, it's a given. but you are adapting it to this local reach network. It'll localize some context. So it might be that you have to blend it in with whatever standards are required at that level in that country. So, but you are still taking the essence. You are still taking the core. It is still a British school. You do follow those barriers and. Yeah, so in terms of the systems, I think if you're a group, it's always better to keep things consistent and standard. If you're an international group, following which program again, keep that consistent and standard. But there are regional differences, and we just take that into consideration more.
Yeah, especially with the platforms as well, is just making it adaptable.
And then that's how it becomes successful.
Yeah.
If we just pick up something, put it in there, we know that's not going to work.
Every EdTech company in the world wants to get into schools, and they all claim what they're doing for children. You've been on the inside. How much of what's being sold to head teachers at the moment, right now, is genuinely good for pupils, and how much of it is just well-packaged normal?
I genuinely think that there's a lot of good things out of the market now, and they're going through quite rigorous process. So being part of an EdTech evidence board, for instance, there is a process you need to go through in order to be a credible, qualified sort of product. I've gone through lots of different test beds, digital test beds, AI test beds, where again they go through a process. So I think a lot of providers are aware of this, and at one point I'll also sort of find products based on their pedagogy, and as long as they pass, then they would get a credit certification that went with it. And many ones they wouldn't pass, so then they would go through their processes and see how they can improve their systems to get to a certain level. So I think we're probably in a better place now with that. There's just a lot out there is, and I think it's confusing for many schools and head teachers to decide what it is they want. But my theory is less is more. You don't really need that much. You're still learning, and most of our ecosystems have a lot of these tools.
I think there is a lot. I walk around there, and as I said, there's some that I like that I wouldn't say are needed. I shut down from an EdTech perspectives, but I also think there's some amazing ones out there that are doing amazing work. What would you say to a head teacher? What advice would you give to a head teacher to say, okay, if you're going to put some tech in, what do you need to look? What are the red flags?
First thing I'd say is, what's your ecosystem? Because based on your ecosystem, we'll know very quickly what you have, what you don't have. And then we'll talk about, so where are your problems? And then I would ask them, so what are the opportunities you want to lean on? What is it you want to do? And then work from there.
It's all about objective, isn't it?
It is. And I think that's what you need to start on. What is your goal? What are you going to do? Why do we keep doing it otherwise?
And I also think from an EdTech perspective, one of the key areas is onboarding. If you're implementing, we've got the teacher side, they need to make sure they've got the objective and it absolutely gets all the goals. And then from an EdTech perspective, I would always say, we've got to hold these schools' hands. I know it's an absolute, but we have to make sure our onboarding is absolutely A1, and you get into a certain point and then you can step away. But I think that, that's one of the common mistakes of EdTech companies, is not onboarding sufficiently enough.
And there's just so much for it to do.
It is don't joke with me. It takes. I have driven a lot of fines. I can assure you.
Yeah, sure. And that's why he's saying, do you teach it? Do you know how to use the bare basics here? Should we start there? And then from there, then what do we want to do?
Okay. Should you make sure the teachers are ready before you teach?
And that absolutely. I know the teachers know why they're doing what they're doing, but do they have the theoretical underpinning? We give them that with the teacher education. Have you done the same with tech?
Yeah.
Now we're doing this. Let's talk to them about the doing. Let's show them how it's going to shift it. And what does this look like? Okay, now we'll put you in this process. Now we're going to give you the tools. And that there's nothing wrong with saying, let's try some new things. We should. That's the innovation side of things. We should try at least 3 new things every year. I mean, they don't work, fine. Yeah. But at least you haven't dumbed down the community or even left them there with continuously progressing.
And I think it's all a lot is trial and error, because what works in one environment isn't going to work in another environment. We know that what works in independent schools might not necessarily work in state schools or international schools. So I think it's being curious. I think everybody needs to be curious. Teachers need to be curious and explore and go, okay, talk together. As a leadership team, talk and sit down. Okay, what problem are we going to solve? Yeah. What do we need? What is there anything that can solve that problem? We're always going to get the age old, that everyone, all the EdTech companies go on about, save budget and save time. But I think it needs to be more than that now in this day and age with AI coming. And we need to push boundaries on all sides, on the tech side and on the teaching side, about curiosity and asking the right questions.
I'd agree. Very much so. I mean, something as simple as I need to put a newsletter together. Okay, newsletter. And then you got AI systems, right? You have all these messages coming through. Here's my last newsletter. This is a new bit of information. Create the same template. So simple. So simple. Our job, I say, is that another that's really not difficult, guys. That's the problem. So start with your problems.
Yeah, definitely. And work backwards. Sometimes we start here to go up there, so going up here to get.
And we're learning so much.
Honestly, it's been for me myself using AI. It's been a massive learning curve. But I swear by it. I use it every single day. I literally use it every single day.
I remember when it first came out, I introduced it to a teacher in a particular group, one kid's mates. And till today, she says, "You changed my life. You changed my life." And she was the most resistant. She never wanted to come. No. I said to her, "Give me 3 minutes. I just need 3 minutes." And I showed her Copilot. I showed her ChatGPT, but I showed her Copilot as well. And after that, she said, "You changed my life overnight." Man, I use Claude.
What great basic. Oh my God, it is just amazing. But there are, and I just think, just play. That's all you do. It's just be curious and play.
But if you have need to agentic AI, so really that's the next thing.
Yeah,
That's
another conversation.
Start next up.
Yeah, that's a completely, I think we'll part that one. It is another one. It is a really bad, look, it leads it. If AI develops at the pace everyone says it will, in the next 10 years, a child in a rural school could theoretically have access to world-class personalised tutor and AI. And there's some schools doing this already. I've seen one down in Devon particularly. Does that terrify you, or does that excite you?
I think both. And I put the words together, cautious excitement. Mainly because I am involved with schools looking to use AI and just create AI personalized learning pathways for the students. Seeing it. We're doing it, we're training them, we've got it in schools already, not here, but internationally. And my worry and what I'm spray and this freed up so much time for the teacher. And the teacher can now build that relationship with the student to help them move along. So you can see that strengthening as well. The worry is if you don't design that learning experience well, then at what point are we weakening the system? And what point are we strengthening the learning? What are we losing along the way? So it could be used so well and so badly. But the experiences where I've seen teachers do it really well, you can see how it's going to accelerate, how things are going to change in that environment for that school. And the students are very comfortable with using that particular closed, controlled AI application. And then we talk to that AI and create that learning and then moving to the next level of development and et cetera, et cetera. But if we just plug the child into ChatGPT or at OpenAI Source or NotebookLM, they're not doing the work anymore. So you still got to get them to struggle. That whole MIT paper about at which point does that struggle stop, but do you hand it over to AI? That's the bit we need to worry about.
The gap. Actually, I've got that. Do you think AI will close a gap, or do you think that gap is going to get bigger until we push that end?
No, I actually think it would close it. And they'd have to get it even without a teacher. You know that hole in the wall experiment with Sugata Mitra where he just put a computer on the wall and he got students to play with it and they learn on their own? It's not very dissimilar to that. You give any child anywhere in the world AI, ChatGPT, and say, can I learn? It's the same thing. They're just going to ask the questions and then keep learning and keep learning. Okay, maybe you won't always be 100%, but we know it's at least 95% accurate, right? So they'll have a 95% accurate of information that's delivered to them, which is probably just as good as anything in the classroom. Yeah. So why would if a child wants to learn, if a learner wants to learn, they can learn now. They're not dependent on a teacher. And in fact, they can learn in a way that suits them best. Whereas the hole in the wall was about learning scientific sort of, I believe it was the human anatomy, something to do with that. And students were learning all the scientific terminology. And they were really young children, okay? The children in the villages in India who, they still not that backward, right? Yeah. And they learned. They came out, and what came out of that was that they had intellectual capacity to learn and can do so. Then why could a not similar child be given an OpenAI source, Copilot? Let's work with that and start asking questions. I don't understand enough mathematical number bonds. Explain that to me. Oh, okay. What's amazing to learn? Maybe now you want to look at grade 3 math, and now you look at grade 4 math. So they didn't have access to a teacher. Does AI become the teacher?
It's interesting to say that because whenever you're using AI, it always prompts you with another question. It never stops.
But I'm dying.
You talk about, doom scrolling. It's AI scrolling now, But it does. It always prompts another question. It always prompts another question. And, like you said earlier, I think AI can close that gap. You'll always need the teacher there for the humanistic side of things. But I think when children don't understand something, it really does fill that gap and that knowledge gap that they're too embarrassed to ask in a very honest frame. Because, I was like that as a child. I was the shyest thing that, I would never say boot on goose. And I would sometimes wish I had a tool that I could have just gone, what does that mean? So, because I think that would have evolved from it.
And also, like, it comes in different languages, right? So the same child, for instance, might want to learn Hindi. Yeah? No, I don't. So learn. It's not, we're not going to suddenly stop, learn. And so I think actually, if nothing else, it could cultivate learning. That's a pretty strong statement to make. Yeah, probably could cultivate learning. Those who want to learn will learn. And those who don't want to learn, well, then you won't learn. But you'll learn something along the way. Now, again, yeah, you love your teachers. And again, that's something else somebody asked me. So are we going to have AI schools? No, I think we'll have a whole catalog of schools. You will have your choice. You want to go to school, a traditional school, go for it. You want to go to school with teachers? Fine. You want to go to another school? And again, I saw this a few weeks ago, which is hybrid, blended, and mostly the school will be done online with some bit of AI and some teachers. Go for that. You want to go fully AI? Go for that. So I think there'll be.
Do you think the models are learning? Do you think that's far? How far do you think we are away from all those different types of models? Not far. Not far. Not far. Because I've already seen some. I did mention. Where are you coming out for? Which country?
All over. I really all bet over. Yeah, that's interesting. Very, yes. And it's mind blowing. So when I went there, I was like, wow, how is this even possible? But it is.
I think that's the exciting part because it allows children to do what they want to do. If a child learn their best. So because we all learn differently. If you've got my son, he would never look at anybody because like the autistic, he couldn't look at a teacher. So if he had a screen, I think he would have learned better, but he got told off all the time because he wasn't looking at the teacher, but he didn't learn that way. And I think, like you said, that blended model will allow children to excel in different areas because they learn differently. And I'm not saying get rid of teachers, not saying that at all. But what I'm just saying is I think it's allowing choice.
And I think you're already seeing that, bit of teachers working in different ways. Yeah. So I've had teachers say, can you find, is there anything online about that's saying, classroom-based environment? I want to be there. So I think if you teacher choices grow, either you go down a more traditional way of going to schools where you're in school for the full period, 9 to 3, etc. Or you have others where you come at 3 days a week. I've seen that too. 2 days you don't have to come in based on your timetable. Or actually we're going to go blended. You're going to have learning hubs. You come in, you work with the TIC students online sometimes and become the particular days, residential camps, or you're fully online. So I think I have all of that. What I will say though is, even though I say it's there and it's fascinating, every model has its problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still in its learning curve. Even our old traditional models happen. Right? It's normal. It happens. So all of these new variations that are coming through as well are early days. Some are slightly more established than others, but they have their challenges, and that's normal. I think that's just life. We all have to talk.
Nothing's
going to be like, how?
No, I think that brings it to a really nice close, actually. And thank you so much for joining this podcast. It's been really fun, actually. It's been really good. And, I think we'll have you on again, actually. And I think we'll talk about generative AI and the different types of AI that are moving at an incredible rate, which we both know that. But yeah, I think I will get you back on. But thank you so much for joining us. And join us for the next B2Education Unpacked series. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for turning up, and thank you for being here. I really, really do appreciate it. Do me one last favour. Just press the subscribe, and then you'll get notified of all of our amazing podcasts.